My mom's a knitter. It's something she really enjoys doing, and she's good at it. And recently she asked me to turn her a yarn bowl. And I've never done that before, so I thought, yeah, sure. And looking at like what to make it out of, I immediately thought about some of the stuff that we brought back from France. We lived there for a few years, and we had some friends that had an orchard full of like plum and cherry, and they allowed me to cull some of their dead and dying trees. And so off I went with the chainsaw, and I got a ton of beautiful colored wood and ended up making a bunch of bowls. And now that was 2014, and 6 years later I still have a few of those bowl blanks left that have just been drying, so for 6 years. Things like cherry and some really nice plum as well. And the thing with a yarn bowl is it needs to be deep, and it needs to be kind of heavy, so like when you pull on the string it doesn't tip over the bowl. So I think that I have one that'll work perfectly for that, and I'm actually going to surprise her with it for Christmas. So it'll be one of the Christmas presents I make, since I'm on a tangent for making gifts instead of buying them. So let's get to getting, and I'll go ahead and turn that bowl for Nana. Alright, I've got a crack in this, and what I'm going to do is use some of the silver tip 2-part epoxy to see if I can bond that back together. It may take a couple of pours, but we'll see. Holy Jiminy. So that is me working that for about 30 minutes, and that crack has just soaked up the epoxy. I had a Jethro Bodine moment, and I actually went, oh crap, it's probably bleeding through. And I took it off the chuck and I turned it over, and no, it wasn't bleeding through, it's just soaking in that much. So after this dries tonight, I'm going to actually go back in tomorrow and put another coat of epoxy in. I've turned some rings into the bottom of the bowl just to give it something interesting on the bottom. The man who owns Standhart Pottery, the potter himself, actually once said that he decorates the underside of his pots because he thinks that curiosity should be rewarded. And I feel the same way, so I always try to make my lids and the bottom of my bowls have a nice little surprise. So I'll add a little more to this before putting my maker's mark on. This is before any major polishing or anything. Here is the crack after it's already dried and recut. So getting this bowl back square in these jaws so it didn't wobble as I cut that wasn't fun. I may have just should have sanded that off, but yeah, lesson learned. So for finishing, I actually use a walnut oil on here, just a couple coats, and then on top of that, as much as I love beeswax, I actually put it's a microcrystalline wax. This one is Doctor's Woodshop LLC. I've had it for years. Contains walnut oil, carnauba, and cosmoloid 80, which is, I guess, the microcrystalline. So, yep, this goes on last. Almost done. I'll flip it over and do the inside, but yeah, look at that color, how that popped on that cherry. Really, really nice.
And then if we go back over to where we did the epoxy infill, we got a little bit of sunken material here, but I mean, for the most, but that just looks great. I'm other than those two little spots there, yeah, I'm okay. The color on this thing is going to be beautiful. Since I don't know just a whole hill of beans about yarn bowls in general, I did some research on the interwebs, and then I went to the local yarn shop and talked to the nice ladies there who showed me about 16 different examples, and then asked would I make them one. But anyway, this is kind of the general consensus. You want your hole lower than the input, so I'm going to really carefully cut this part out on the bandsaw. And first, though, I need to do the hole, because after I cut this out, it's not going to be fun to drill, and I hopefully won't crack anything. But I'm going to do the hole first. I think that's generally how it's done from the two articles that I read. But that's how I'm doing it. So let's see how it works.
And once more in slow motion.
So I 100% knew better than that. I was just doing just a quick little, and look at that. Cut it all the way. Now, shockingly, it didn't go all the way through. I'm actually going to patch that. I'm going to patch that and fix it, and it's going to be a lesson learned. But I have ruined the blade in the saw.
And I almost cut off my damn thumb.
Uncool. Yep, my own stupidity.
And the aftermath of said stupidity. So, I mean, it didn't go through. I hadn't even finished the inside of the bowl yet, so that's somewhat good. It did cut all the way through to here, so to about, let's see, about this level. And then from here to here, it came within a 1/16 of an inch. I used a feeler gauge from popping through. So, yeah, a little less deep here, and then just kind of grazed it there, and that's where the blade bent. It did grab here, it did chew there a little bit. I can clean that up, that's fine. It's got a little bit of a ding here, where after it bounced off my chest and hit the hit the bandsaw table again, it dinged it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna fill this with epoxy. I had thought about, or I'm thinking about maybe butterflying it right here as well, just because that will be open. So we'll see, but I'm definitely going to fill it with epoxy, and I'm just going to have to refinish the bottom. Ordinarily I would just cut it in half and it'd be a teachable moment, but it's such a beautiful bowl, and it has such personal history with being from the orchard in France. And you know, I cut down the tree, I split the wood, I rough turned the bowl, and it's just been sitting there in the shop drying since 2014. So yeah, I don't want to cut it in half. I'm gonna salvage it and you know, fix it. But again, show your mistakes. Maybe someone can learn from them. So I've got it mixed in my little solo cup here, and I've poured it in, and I'm using this old razor blade. It's a dull one that I've swapped out and haven't recycled yet. By the way, when you recycle razor blades, put tape around it before you put it in the recycling.
nobody at the recycling center wants to get cut with an old nasty razor blade. Just put a little tape on it and it can still be recycled. But again, little tape. That's all you need. So, using the razor blade to get it way down deep. And as you can see here, I mean, that's how deep that side went. Almost all the way through. Again, with the feeler gauge, 1/16 of an inch. I know I said it before, but I'm real happy to have all my fingers and my thumbs after that incident. I'm gonna let this sit for 12 hours and harden up. I'm actually in my underground layer because it's warmer in here than in the shop, so it'll set up nicely. All right. Alright, what I've done is I had some leakage, so I went ahead for the second pour and I've built it up with a dam on either side and a little bit of a dam here. And I'm just going to flood this, and then again with the razor blade, push it down in here as much as possible and just let it flow. So I've got some more epoxy mixed up. Repair has been made, but one of the things I'm not happy about is if we turn this over, this is almost full thickness, and I guarantee, epoxy or not, that's going to crack at some point. So I thought about using the Dremel tool and putting a dog bone in there or a bow tie, but I just, with that curve and everything else, what I think I'm going to do is run 3 cuts with the table saw, and then I'm going to put pieces of walnut in there and glue them in, and hopefully that keeps it from moving too much, but let's see. Alright, I did not go full thickness through. I got about a 1/16 of an inch on the inside. If you look here, it did not cut through, so let me go ahead and cut these bits of walnut, and I'll get those glued in. So this piece and this tiny little piece might literally be the last walnut I have in the shop. Now it looks like some sort of weird house on Tatooine, but yeah, I'm gonna let that dry, and then take this excess off, put it back on the lathe, get rid of some of this spillover epoxy, and refinish it. Then take this and not make the same mistake twice and try to shortcut it with the bandsaw, but actually take a Dremel and cut out that path for the yarn. Lesson learned. Well, actually lots of lessons learned there. Alright, I've got the bowl clamped in the vise. I'm going to go ahead and take the saw and trim this off and then cut it down with a chisel before I put it back on the lathe. Extenuating circumstances call for extenuating measures. Something I don't do very often. I'm pulling out the Dremel tool. Alright, now that was a messy, dusty affair. Let's put that on the lathe, get it sanded up good. Whew. Well, here she is, after all of the fixing, the epoxy, the sanding, putting it back on the lathe, using the Dremel tool, and this is the first coat of walnut oil. I'll let this dry tonight, and tomorrow I will put another coat of walnut oil on and then finish it with a microcrystalline wax. Yeah, as you can see, I was so almost done that I had already marked the bottom of the bowl with my brand. So yeah, now I'm extra done. So not the prettiest thing in the world, but I think it'll be great for her. It makes me happy to fix something that I screwed up, and still make it usable and functional.
I hope that my mom uses this bowl, every day, and that she gets a lot of joy out of its use, and that it is an assistant to her. I will say that the lessons learned from making this bowl, yeah, they've stuck. They really have. Sometimes success is not the best teacher, and there wasn't a whole lot of initial success with doing this yarn bowl, and failure taught me a lot, both about me as a turner, and then also like how to fix it, how to make it better. So yeah, I really appreciate you following me along on this kind of long journey to make a yarn bowl. Thank you. I appreciate it.